Block Gemara. We are up to Daf Chavav Amid Aleph, the Mishnah. We're continuing to discuss the various kinyonim to make acquisitions. So the last Mishnah we learned about different kinyonim for metaltlin, by animals, your cattle. We talked about a kinyon called Mesira, which we had a machlekes Rashi Tezer, which is actually giving over the reins, or you just take it yourself. We had a kinyon Meshicha, which is you're taking out of the reshus of the owner and you bring it into your own reshus. And we discussed the big machlekes of Shainim, which is a stronger kinyon. Is Meshicha the strongest kinyon because you bring it into your reshus, or is Mesira the strongest kinyon because the way Rashi learns, at least, the vendor is handing over to you the object. And then we have Hagbah, that's kind of b'chol makom, because Mesira is limited according to many only in the Reshus Rabim and in the Chatzah that belongs to either of them. Meshicha is kind of in a simta. Meshicha is not really kind of Reshus Rabim because you're not bringing it into your Reshus. And Hagbah is kind of b'chol makom, so from a certain vantage point, Hagbah is stronger. So really the question is Meshicha the main kinyan and everything else is similar to Meshicha, or is really Mesira the main kinyan and everything else is similar to Mesira? And then we didn't discuss the Mishnah, but we just Chalipin. And now the Mishnah is talking about assets. Assets. How do you kind of assets? Says the Mishnah, the Chosim Sheyesh Lamachai is property that has a responsibility. What do you mean responsibility if it gets lost? Or let's say the purchaser loses out to one of your lenders, you have to reimburse him. That's a general euphemism for properties. Because properties don't move, they don't disappear. They're always there, they stay in one place. So the chosim sheyesh lamachrayis, nikin, how do you acquire them? Either through kesef, with money, either through shtar, with a contract, or with a chazaka. Chazaka means that you have to make some kind of reparations in the field that you demonstrate ownership. That you dig some, you turn over some of the soil. So we just started the Mishnah here with how do you acquire properties? So through money, through shtar, or through chazaka. Chazaka means that you fix, you mend the fences. Rashi says even if you walk on the boundaries, which means more than just walking, you're demonstrating where the property ends. Maybe you move a few things around to show where the boundaries are. All of these things show that you are the owner. And, of course, through money. When we say money, it doesn't mean, let's say the land is worth $1,000. Doesn't mean you got to pay the full $1,000. You can pay a deposit, and the deposit is the kinyan. And we discussed last time, Machlekes and Achreinis, Amen, the Taz and others, whether that deposit, the kinyan, is just really as if you paid the value of the property, but the rest is just a loan, or it's a separate thing called kinyan kesef. Anyway, so 3 ways. Kesef shtar chazaka. She'ein lemachrayis, for mobile assets, those metaltlin, einiknin ele meshicha. The only way you're coined through meshicha. What do you mean only way you're coined meshicha? We just said before, there's all these other kinyonim. What he means over here is, as the Shainim point out, that the 3 kinyonim that work for for properties do not work for metaltlin. You cannot use a contract. You cannot just fix it up, nor money. Even though according to the Shlakish Mahatayra, the only way to coin a metaltlin is meshicha. According to Rabbi Yochanan Mahatayra, it's money. It's the Rabbanon that came in and said, no, not money. We want meshicha. Why? We're learning more about Metzia. The reason is Shem, because if the Meicher received his money and you didn't take the stock yet, sitting in his warehouse, if there's water damage, if there's a fire, they'll say, hey, it's your problem. Why should I go out there on a limb and try to rescue something that belongs to you? Shem you're cheating up, burnt up in the aliyah. Okay, nechazin sheim lemachrayis. The Mefarshim want to know already, why don't we mention Chalipin? And one of the reasons given is Chalipin does not work, or places here has a question, but other places says definitely does not work when it comes to renting property. And since these kinyanim work for buying property or renting property, and we're trying to make a distinction between metaltlin, and we're saying that Meshicha, Chalipin does not work on properties. We're asking why we mention Chalipin by properties. It doesn't work by properties where you want to rent. Why doesn't work properties want to rent is because anything which you sell and you get back, Chalipin is a final swap. I'm getting this and you're getting that. But when you're renting or borrowing, eventually it'll come right back to me. So therefore, it doesn't make sense that Chalipin should be able to work. It's really a temporary swap. And that's why, according to most Hashem, it doesn't work. Okay. Now we have another din, and that is if I am purchasing from you 2 things. I'm purchasing a property and I'm purchasing your portable items. I'm buying a house with the furniture. If you make a kinyan on let's say on the house, everything else automatically is yours as well. We'll discuss whether the other things have to be in the house literally or they can be anywhere. So when you buy, we'll see later, called kinyan agav. By the way, this is like secondary. I'm kind of the ikr. I'm kind of the secondary thing as well. Whether you have to use the word agav. The Gemara will later on talk about whether you have to use tomorrow's Gemara, whether you have to use the word agav when you say that or not, or is it automatic? If I'm buying two things, automatically the metal thing gets dragged along, or I have to physically say, I have to verbalize agav. But whether the word agav has to be used, or whether you can say im with, or any other word that means the same thing, is a machlekes in halach. The kesef shtar chazaka, you use the kesef shtar chazaka, and automatically the rest comes in. On the other hand, we know that let's say if I'm moeded b'miktzas, if I make a partial admission, you're claiming $100, I admit to 50. We learned the concept in Ksubas of moeded b'miktzas. If I am making a partial admission, you have to swear on the balance. If I'm moeded, I owe you $50, I have to swear I don't owe you the balance. We had it up Yuches in Ksubas. And but what about on properties? You told me you had 10 vines, and I said, no, you only gave me 5 vines. Do you swear? And we learned from passing in property, you don't swear. But if, let's say, we're talking about two things that, let's say, you're claiming from me money and you're claiming from me property, and I'm moeded b'mitzvahs on, let's say, on the money. Once I am moeded mitzvah on the money, it also drags along that you can force me to make a shvur on the property as well, like a Gilgul Shua. And we'll talk about that tomorrow. And it pulls the nechasim, the portable items. If I have to swear on that because of moeded mixes, it drags along also those properties, assets that are not portable that I have to swear on. Says the Gemara. First of all, the kesef on Haino kesef works. Amar Chizkiah Makra says the pasuk by Yirmiyah, he was advised we're going to Babel, but you should buy properties in Etzisrael. So there is by kesef you can purchase properties with money. Clearly, that's how you kind it with money. So the maybe you also need a contract of seal. It says in that pasuk as well, the cost of the safe of the chasam. Write it down and seal it and store it and so on. So we see clearly you need a contract. Says the Gemara, if it would have said sodas by kesef v'kosem b'seif v'kosem yiknu, then you're right. And the yiknu will go only after you also wrote a contract. Kedamit hashtag yiknu. Now that it says sodas by kesef yiknu, clearly how are you kind it? What makes it yours? The kesef, the money. Why are you advising me to have a contract in 70 years from now? Who's going to remember who has what? So you have to have a deed as evidence. So kesef koni shtar rai balmu. The kesef is what makes the kinyan, and the shtar in that pasuk is only as evidence in the future. This property is yours. Amar Rav says, Rav, when do we say this? When do we say that money, it virtually on its own makes the kinyan only? The minig was not to write any contract at all. However, but the place where you write contract, you're not kind until you have the shtar. Now, Rashi says the logic is very simple. The vendor is not happy to make the sale unless he has proof that the sale was a sale. So even though he received the money, he's waiting for the contract, Section 32, to be written and signed up before the vendor feels comfortable that the deal is complete. So he's not saying mechdas. So if the minig is to write a shtar, machlekes is showing you what kind of shtar we're talking about. We're talking about a shtar kinyan or even a shtar raya. Some Rishonim hold that even a shtaraya, even just a contract which is not the kinyan itself, but this is the proof that I can keep and store that the sale took place, is also sufficient to hold back the kinyan. It's not the conclusive kinyan until the shtar was written. But the parish, if the purchaser spoke out to Chatchila and he said, "I'll decide whether it's the shtar or the money," then it works. What do you mean? Kiha the Ravidi. About Ravi and Kizovin Adam when he bought land. If I want, I will be kind of with money. And if I want, he's saying, I'm saying both, shtar and money. And I want it to be my decision, whatever benefits me. Like this. The purchaser says that I gave you the money. So if, let's say, the price of the field goes up and the vendor says, you didn't write a contract, I'm canceling the deal. No, I want money to be the king. But if, let's say, for whatever reason, he says, I want to change the buyer, the price values went down. And the buyer says, I want to get out. And the purchaser said, hey, but he gave me the vendor said, but he gave me the money. Oh, but I didn't write the contract yet. So I want to do it to bet if he punish, says the benefit himself, he benefits himself. Yeah. I want to have the choice which one should be my kinyan. That if you want to change, you should make the change. The reason if I want the start to be effective, so I want to have the option to change my mind. Just like the Sam Sofer says when a rabbi writes a contract, the contract is only one way. The shul has no right to ever fire. But you're not allowed to have a contract longer than 30 years because you're nevid. So the contract is that the Rav is the one who decides to prolong the contract or not. It's his decision to go on and not. It's not the board's decision to let him go. When it comes to a contract, how do we know that? It says because of the words. If it goes because of the and then the pasuk continues behind Edim, and you'll have proof. You just said a minute ago that this pasuk is not talking about a star kinyan, it's talking about a star as evidence. This doesn't in any way make a kinyan, a form of acquisition. Another pasuk that Yirmiyah said, "But ekach a sefer hamikne, I will take this sefer that and he called the contract sefer hamikne, the purchase document." When do we say this only by a star matana? Do we say that the purchase document is a kinyan? But even if there's a star, it's not a kinyan until he pays money. Why? Because the meicher feels as well that he's not tzemach das if he doesn't have the money in his hand. But Ramon has a question. Says, Kate said, "Because when you wrote on a paper or a piece of clay, I put the sod. I feel sold to you. Sod, and I feel given to you." It says clearly, "Sod daim mechura lach. I feel sold to you." It's a sale. You just said that a contract on its own is not a sale because the vendor wants to see the money. He's not shayimich das. So here's clearly that mechura lach. And he can't change his mind. So no matter who he asked the question, he answered. If a person is selling a property, he's desperate, he needs the cash. Then as soon as he has a contract, for him it's good enough. He's happy to make the sale because he knows the chances are he'll probably get paid. Sorry? So he'll probably get paid. When we have a general rule with if Isla sorry? No, he's desperate for money. He needs to pay the bank the next few days. So he wants to tie you up. So that and usually if you have a contract, you're not going to get out of it because you can take it in trade. So therefore he's saying das that you're going to pay, and generally also you paid less than the market value. It's a fire sale price, so all probability is that you're going to go ahead. So we're talking about a star matana here, not a star mecha. No, star mecha the vendor is not happy to finalize the sale until he sees the money in his bank account. It's a sodai mechurulach. He put into the star matana those words to strengthen the case of the recipient of the matana. To make his case even stronger. But if in case, let's say, the lender of the donor comes and takes the property away, the recipient of the matana can go now to the benefactor and say, "Hey, reimburse me because you wrote mechurulach. Mechurulach it has a chrayis." So there is he came to strengthen his cause. So Teisha then explains also that the matana also has an advantage, and they're saying, let's say, writing a matana is, let's say in a star mecha he wrote matana. It also has an mile in that that is by mechin is a thing called bar metzra. I cannot sell a property that's next to a neighbor who wants to buy it to somebody else. But if it's a matana, I can. I'm not mechuyev to give you a gift, but that person I want to give a gift. So you got it. So Taisha therefore wants to learn that he actually gives him two stars, one star matana, one star mecha. Each one has an advantage. In other words, that's why write star matana at all. Just write star mecha, even though you give him as a gift. There's an advantage in matana in cases of bar metzra. So you give him two contracts, and he'll hide whichever one doesn't benefit him. Very sneaky. Says he about it further. It says the pasuk that
8 sheker sign on both.
Is it no? Because you're giving him the strength of the mile. You're giving him the halachic advantage of being a mecha. Not that you're saying there's money changing hands. You don't say anywhere that money change hands. There's nothing deceptive here. You're just saying how strong you're making the king there. He says over here, yeah. He's saying you live in the cities that you have taken over. So we see clearly from here what by metafastim yeshiva, just by living there. Now we know chazak means more than just living. So even though we use the word yeshiva, v'shavu means so it means not just to sit. It means to dwell. It means live there like a dweller. A dweller normally fixes things up, makes repairs. So that's what you do. Very short time. It says the passage we rashem as it says the chumash. The rashem oisa v'yishaftem. You should take over the land. But may rashem be yeshiva living there. Said the passage there that if you make a sale and something that goes from hand to hand, something that goes from hand to hand, which is what well, Rabbi Yechon holds money is kind of. It's only that Rabbanon that Mashiach is kind of so that the vendor should take care of this whatever he sold until the other person takes ownership. Michael name it. Tana Takana Rabbanon. Tana is telling you to Takana the Rabbanon. The Choshesh is you can buy with the Choshesh price. But how do you know that? The king Yehoshaphat gave to his family by Yitilam Avi and Matanas im Orei Mitzuras BeYehuda. Gave Matanas together with these 45 cities. So we see clearly. For me, you see actually that im is like agav as well. Lav dafka that the pasuk tell you what words are used, just telling you a fact. So there's no rai one way or another. So do you need the actual talking to be sitting on the property or not? The obvious question is if it's sitting on the property, what do you kinyan agav for? That's kinyan chatzah. So the Ritva and other Rishonim answer, we learned before that a kinyan chatzah only works if you're either standing next to it or it's a mishtameres. It's gated off. But if it's wide open, your chatzah is not kind. But if it's tzibur and if it's agav, even though there are no fences and you're not there, you can still be kind of the metaltalin agav, the property that you're buying at the same time. Others want to argue that kinyan chatzah only works if the chatzah is already yours and then the item falls in. But here, the chatzah is not yours yet. The house isn't yours. The item's already there. And if you're kinyan the item, you can't say you're kinyan chatzah because which is first, which is second. You make the kinyan one instant. So that instant, it's not. It wasn't there. Only what you have to have a mind to be kind afterwards, and others say maybe you even have to physically pick them up and put it back in again. So therefore, we're talking about kinyan agav. Does it have to physically be there or not? Tomorrow we'll talk about whether you even have to say the word agav. Once we've established one way or another. Something about according to the slightest amount of kaki you have, you're already high to give me the corner and give kurim and little approval. We know he'll make that to bypass the problem of shmita. So he says you have to you're right approval, but which one? You have to have property. The borrower has to own property because most loans are secured against property. But once you have property, we don't care what size it is because it's more notional, it's more symbolic than anything else. In fact, the lender can lend property to the borrower. And the Bein Tam says, actually, we had more ksubas where it's a possibility, a small little property. You give it, you see the back, you give it again, you see the back, you can take one little property and give it over 100 times to reach the value, whatever the value of the loan is. And the likas, we can learn about Basra, I think it is, that every Yid has 4 Amos in Eretz Yisrael. Every Yid owns 4 Amos in Eretz Yisrael. But obviously that property is not good enough when it comes to proving all these things. And the whole discussion, a shul. So some of the shul talk about a shul, that everyone in the community owns a share in the shul. Can you use that, say that my share in the shul should be my property for prusbul, for everything else? So they want to say an interesting thing. You can. Say you can. But if your father is still alive and you weren't born at the time when the shul was built, then everyone who was born afterwards have no chelik in the shul. When their parents pass away, they get it as a Yerusha. But with Kolzman, the parents are alive, they have the share. How do you have a share? But in theory, it seems to the Shainim learn you can use the shul as an asset.
Go to the bank.
Yeah, see what happens. Yeah. Valuable asset. The likna, then he says, likna is iman nechasish ein lemachai. You can use a little koldu to purchase the chasim. It's clear. How much can you put on a koldu? The Amabin, it's a budim that the metalton has to be sitting on top of the property. Kosher l'may chazir. What can you put on a kosher? What do you mean? Shmuel said, I'll tell you what. You should know a needle. I'm going to be kabastin. You're annoying. You're driving me crazy. If mutanash mean machet, the tanas think you're din for a needle. Rabashi, why? Man, maybe there was a brilliant, there was a diamond there, a precious stone, a gem that was sitting on top of this needle that's worth thousands of dollars. Tashma coming here. Amar Abba said, the story, the person from the city of Midon, he had a lot of metalton, he wanted to give it to somebody as a gift. They told him, there's no way you can give someone else a gift. You have to give me kinyan. How's he going to do that? The only way we can do that is I'll gabi karka. Now look, why can't the guy just come and do shifting? Only way is give him a piece of property, and with that, so what did he do? Holach v'lokar base seller. He took a property. Right now we're learning the size of a coin to seller. Samuchil Yerushalayim. V'amri said tzafayni, and here we delineated clearly the north side of this property and the south side. The imay meyat zayin mey chavis with it 100 sheep and 100 barrels, and then suddenly the Macy died. I was the bottom. The family wanted whatever happened, and he went to the trade and he won. How many sheep can you put on the size of a coin of a seller? So you want me to base seller seller mamish? You think it means mamish the size of a coin? My seller did not fish too big. It was a big property. I might call it seller. Why call it seller? Seller over here didn't mean a coin. Seller means a rock. The koshik seller. He bought a property that they could. There was no soil there. It was very. He couldn't plant there anything at all. That's what he called seller. But really, maybe he needs tzibur. But the story, a person. Right now, we're saying, only if it's sitting on the thing here. Yes. In other words, in order to be buckled, in order for the metalton to be buckled to the property, there maybe has to be there on it. The story now, Rabbi Lezer holds. We learned so many times. He says words, you write it down, and it's recorded, and even if he doesn't say, write it down and so on. But Rabbi Lezer doesn't agree. So we're either talking about a sick person, according to Rabbi Lezer, who says that you have to proper kinyanim. There's no such thing as kibbush, or the body. Others say it was healthy. Kirabanan, who hold a sick person is different, but there's a healthy person. So I want to have a lot of metalton. Matani wanted to gift someone. There's nothing you can do. The only way you can give the entire estate to someone else is give them a piece of property with it. He bought a little property the size of a base rate, which means you can plant a quarter of a kav. The size, a kav is 24 eggs, so it's a quarter of 6 eggs of produce. But Amar tefach al tefach leplani. And he said this tefach by a tefach to that person. The mason, he died. And she gave a little piece of property, a slither, and he said, "But that is 100 sheep and 100 barrels." And Kaima comes water, and they fulfilled his words. He can't give me any stories about rocks. Clearly, he says tefach al tefach. So how did it work? He didn't give them physically 100 sheep or 100 barrels. He says the value. So he put down there $1,000, and that fits on that piece of property. I'll prove it to you. But he's talking about literally. Mamish. Then why do you have to give property? There are other ways. We learned before. Meshicha, Mesira. There are other kinyanim. Or give chalipin. Give chalipin. Why do you have to use this whole remedy about giving property and all that? There's only one possible solution. The dummy. What he gave him, he said, I'm not giving you the animal, I'm giving you the money. And we learned that you cannot be kind of money with chalipin. You can be kind of payers, vessels, but you cannot swap money for chalipin because money has a different purpose. Money is value, chalipin is not value. So therefore you cannot swap. Okay, so you can't do chalipin. Why can't you do meshicha? You must conclude that the person wasn't here and you're doing it on his behalf. He says here, so therefore, the reason why there's no chalipin here is also because the guy just wasn't present. So who's going to give the handkerchief or whatever it is, the shoe, to make the swap? Because we know the purchaser is the one that has to give his keli and the swap. And in exchange of that, you give me whatever your object is. But he's not here. Says the Gemara, and so the Gemara says, guess someone else doing on your behalf. Let someone else give their handkerchief to the thing. This person, the beneficiary, is not relying on some stranger, because the stranger will take all this produce, the wine, and drink it. till he comes around, whoever he is, to pick it up. So Shamid ba'achalu. So the my ain't like takana. So why does it say there's no takana? There's a takana. He's just not happy with it. Well, when there's no takana, the only way is by giving property. In his mind, there's no other choice. So, but again, we haven't resolved the question of whether you can put the things directly on the property tziburin, because over here we're talking about money, and money that fit on. The Rishonim talk about there's another kinyan called kinyan oidisa. A person before he dies, he says, "I am moided. I owe this and this and this." Called kinyan oidisa. So why couldn't the guy do kinyan oidisa? And it's a kinyan. I'll tell you anything else. So based on that, some Rishonim want to say kinyan oidisa is not really a kinyan. It's more, I am moided that I owe you from the past. It's more like testimony. So therefore, it's not a new kinyan. Doesn't really work. Others try to figure out why this doesn't mention it. Tashma coming here. They were traveling on a ship. Oh, you were traveling on a ship. They're going to Rome. Rabbi Kiva was there, who was the gabbai for poor people, and Rabbi Shua was there, was a Levi. So Rabbi Gamliel, they were traveling, and the way Rashi learns, and takes a difficult time with Rashi. Rabbi Gamliel forgot to give True Ma'aser. We know there's a chazaka, a Talmud Chacham, does even when he's dying on that day, that he wouldn't leave things which are not Mesukid. But Rabbi Gamliel, the Nasi Rashi says, he forgot to tell anybody to give True. Cases over here, you long cases. Others, they don't agree with Rashi at all. They learn it's talking about Shnas beer. It's not that he forgot, he gave, but he didn't yet give it to the Kohen or Levi, the final destination, and you have to get rid of it by Pesach, and that's the issue here. Anyway, the Muslims came that which I'm going to separate, Yeshua. I'm giving you now to Yeshua. Yeshua was a Levi, and he's from the singers, as we learned, and therefore I'm giving it to him. And this way, there's no longer table at home. Everybody can eat the rest of the tour. It's not a problem anymore because he left. According to Rashi, he left without giving him ma'aser. Everything is table. And then when he comes back, whatever's left over, he'll give ma'aser. But how is he going to be kind of? I'm going to give it to him. How am I going to give it to him? I'm going to give him a little piece of property. I'm going to rent him out a piece of property, and then when he's kind of the property, he'll be kind of the ma'aser with it. And then later on, we'll use Yesh Breira, according to many Rishonim, that when they come back, whatever's left over, that's probably what was given in the first place. The Isra Achash Almud, and the other one, the Meiser Ani, I'll give Takir ben Yosef. Because Hil Mizake La'aniyim, he's a gabe for the Aniyim. Okay, Muskul, the same thing. Why did he have to give property with it? Is a raya that what? That and he said the property that's underneath, whatever the Meiser is. So we see clearly there has to be Tziburim. Because he says, I'm going to give Umakai Mai, the place where that Meiser is sitting, Meiser Ani. Says the Gemara, Shmam Rabin Saburin, but no. Shiny Hasi, that's no prayer. If he would have given the property somewhere else, he might have to go there and then physically pick up the Meiser to bring it to make it his. You don't want to take them, it's already yours. Don't worry about it. Says the Gemara, Toshma, no proof either way. Again, saying there are two kinds of contracts, there are two dinim regarding contracts. One is if I tell somebody, I want you to be zeicher this field on behalf of that person. The keys for later start, I want you to write a contract as well, a proof that I gave him the property. He can always change his mind if I don't want the kinyan is too late, but I don't want to give the shtar raya. He can change his mind. But he cannot change his mind. But if he says, I want you to give him the field, I want you to write the shtar. And Kolzman that didn't write the shtar, I could change my mind about the shtar. Automatically, the property also does not become his because I tied the two together. I can change my mind on both because one is totally in the other. But in fact, got three din. Today, you just said either the last din is in kadam moiche because of shtar. Moiche is allowed to write a shtar sale of a property to somebody even before the guy consented or for anything else, before he got permission from that other person. Because we learned, and it's not called a shtar mugdim because as the Abaye said, Eida b'chasuma zochla. So the Eidim signed, they can be zeich already. So the date of the shtar is actually when the shtar takes effect, even though he didn't consult the other person yet. But kivan sheherzik imay bekarka, that is, since he made a chazaka in the karka, nik nishtar b'chol mishru. Since he wrote the shtar already, as soon as the other person consents, and he buys the property, he makes a key to the property chazaka, wherever the shtar is kind. So we see the shtar is not sitting on the ground, but kinyanaga. The shtar is metalfus. What are we talking about? Shiny star, isn't the star like the scrap of the ground? It's connected to the ground. It's not stam the belt, metaltlin, the karka, two disparate things, and I'm kind of one with the other. No. Well, Tony, we learned Zuhi Shishanin. The Gemara says no. There's a Fesha Brisa that says Zuhi. This is the perfect paradigm to what we learned that the Nechasim she'ein le'machrayis niknin im nechasim sheyesh le'machrayis. That you're buying karka metalkin, you make a key in the karka, automatically go with it. Because Shmamino, loy be'inin tziburi baz. A raya, clear raya, you don't need that it should be piled on the ground. Shmamino. Kinyan agav is that the metaltin be'etzim is secondary to property, and therefore when I'm buying both things from you, I make a key in the property, automatically all the metaltin joins it as well. We'll stop here.